The small town of Willow Creek was shrouded in mourning. Jasmine, a beloved college student, had been found dead in the woods, her lifeless body hidden among the autumn leaves. She was the latest victim in a string of mysterious deaths that had haunted the town for months. The killer remained unidentified, leaving the community gripped by fear and suspicion. Ayana's life had been normal until Jasmine's death. She was a college student living in Willow Creek, a small, quiet town where everyone knew each other. Ayana had friends, attended classes, and worked part-time at the local bookstore. Her best friend Nadia often visited, bringing a sense of comfort and familiarity. Ayana's life was ordinary, almost too ordinary, but she liked it that way. Jasmine's death had cast a shadow over Ayana's life. She couldn't stop thinking about her friend, remembering their last conversation and how they had laughed together. Now Jasmine was gone, and the town was left with more questions than answers. As the days passed, mysterious calls began. Each time the voice grew more menacing. Ayana confided in Nadia, who suggested they inform the police. The police dismissed it as a prank, but Ayana couldn't shake the feeling of impending dread. Subtle hints began to appear: a broken window latch, a misplaced item, shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ayana felt like she was being watched, even during the day. The small town's friendly facade began to crack, revealing a sinister undertone. Nadia noticed Carlos had been acting strangely recently, disappearing without explanation and giving vague answers when asked where he'd been. Ayana brushed it off, trusting her friend of many years. One stormy evening, Ayana returned home to find her front door slightly ajar. Her heart raced as she stepped inside, calling out for Nadia, who was supposed to be waiting for her. Silence greeted her. Ayana's eyes scanned the room, landing on a note pinned to the kitchen table. "I'm closer than you think." Ayana's blood ran cold. She frantically searched the house, but Nadia was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as she realized Nadia was missing. Desperation drove Ayana to dig deeper into the mystery. She discovered that several young women in the town had received similar calls before disappearing. The townsfolk whispered about an old legend of a vengeful spirit that haunted the area, preying on the unsuspecting. Ayana's investigation led her to the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, rumored to be the spirit's lair. She enlisted the help of her friend, Carlos, who had always been skeptical of the supernatural. Together, they braved the mansion, its decaying walls and eerie silence amplifying their fear. As they explored, they found a hidden room filled with newspaper clippings and photos of the missing women, including Jasmine. At the center of the room was a dusty old phone, identical to the one Ayana had received the calls on. Suddenly, the phone rang, echoing through the empty halls. "Ayana!" the voice hissed. "You're too late." They continued searching and found more unsettling clues. Ayana noticed a familiar watch lying on a table, Carlos's watch. She picked it up, feeling a chill run down her spine. How did it get here? Carlos tried to dismiss it, saying he must have dropped it during one of their visits to the mansion out of curiosity. But Ayana's suspicion grew. Why hadn't she seen the watch before now? Ayana and Carlos reached the basement, where they found Nadia, tied up and unconscious. Her body was covered in cuts, and her eyes were wide with terror. As they untied her, Ayana noticed a distinctive scratch on Nadia's arm, one she had seen on Carlos's hand a few days earlier. Carlos, how did you get that scratch? Ayana asked, her voice trembling. Carlos's face twisted into a cruel smile. It was me all along, Ayana. The spirit, the calls, the disappearances, they were all me. Ayana's heart sank as she realized the truth. Carlos had been manipulating her all along, using the legend to cover his tracks. Ayana, Nadia, and Carlos struggled in the basement. Ayana, using her quick thinking, managed to knock Carlos unconscious with a heavy wooden beam. They tied him up with the same ropes he used on Nadia. Ayana dialed the police, her hands shaking as she explained everything. The authorities arrived and Carlos was taken away. The mansion was searched, revealing even more horrifying evidence of his twisted crimes. Ayana and Nadia were safe, but the trauma of the events lingered. Days later, Ayana sat in her living room, the memory of that night haunting her. Her phone buzzed and she flinched. It was Nadia, checking in on her. Ayana was grateful for her friend's survival and support. They both knew the horror wasn't entirely over. Carlos's actions would haunt them forever, a grim reminder of the darkness that can hide behind a friendly face. As Ayana hung up, she noticed a small, forgotten item in the corner of the room. Carlos's watch, the same one she had found in the mansion. She stared at it, a cold shiver running down her spine. Some horrors, it seemed, never truly end. Later that night, Ayana's phone buzzed again with an unknown number. Her heart raced as she answered it. "Hello?" she whispered. "Ayana." A familiar, distorted voice crackled through the phone. "Did you really think it was Carlos all along?" Ayana's blood ran cold. She quickly called Nadia, her hands trembling. "Nadia, we need to talk. I just got another call." Nadia's voice on the other end was calm, too calm. "Ayana, relax. Carlos is gone. We're safe." Ayana noticed something odd in Nadia's tone, something she had missed before. She recalled the moment in the basement when they untied Nadia, how easily the ropes came undone, how Nadia had no real injuries. A horrifying realization dawned on her. "Nadia, it was you, wasn't it?" The line went silent for a moment before Nadia spoke again, her voice now cold and calculating. "You were always so easy to manipulate, Ayana. Carlos was just a pawn, forced to take the blame." Ayana's mind raced back to an earlier moment she had overlooked. A few days before the call started, she had caught a glimpse of Nadia scrolling through Carlos's phone. When Ayana had asked her about it, Nadia had laughed it off, claiming she was just messing around. Ayana hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now it made perfect sense. "You used his phone to make the calls," Ayana whispered in horror. Nadia's laugh echoed through the line. "And he took the fall perfectly. Goodbye, Ayana." As Ayana sat in shock, she remembered a crucial detail from their past. Years ago, Ayana, Nadia, Carlos, and Jasmine had been close friends. Jasmine had been Ayana's best friend before Nadia came along. Nadia had always been jealous of Jasmine, especially when she saw the way Carlos looked at Jasmine. Nadia had feelings for Carlos and couldn't bear to see him with Jasmine. One evening, they had all been at a party. Ayana remembered Jasmine going missing that night, only to be found dead in the woods a few days later. The case had remained unsolved, and Ayana had never quite moved past the loss. She had always suspected foul play, but had no proof. Suddenly, it all clicked. The bruises on Nadia's neck, the self-inflicted wounds. Nadia had staged her own kidnapping, just like she had staged Jasmine's death. Nadia had killed Jasmine out of jealousy because Jasmine was too close to Carlos. When Carlos discovered the truth and confronted Nadia, She threatened to harm Ayana if Carlos didn't take the fall for her crimes. Carlos, caring deeply for Ayana, had sacrificed himself to protect her. The realization hit Ayana like a tidal wave. The true monster had been beside her all along, hidden in plain sight, driven by jealousy and a desire to maintain her facade of innocence at all costs. The call ended, leaving Ayana in a cold, stunned silence. The true horror had been right beside her all along, hidden behind a friendly face.